Bruce, you must have something really good too.
Of course I do. It's Bruce Danielson, and I guess I'm here to entertain you too.
It is now 3:30 Central Time, and I'd like to call to order this quarterly meeting of the Sioux Falls Board of Ethics. Carrie, would you call the roll, please? On the board.
Jeff Kamalski.
Here.
Greg Follett.
Here.
Jack Marsh.
Here.
Sue Rouse. Here. Wanda Harris is absent today.
Okay, one board member is absent, and we knew that was going to happen today, but we still have a quorum, so we will proceed. The first order of business is the election of a chair and a vice chair, and for the sake of those in the audience, all five of us here on this board serve by mayoral appointment, 3-year terms, but the board itself elects to 1-year terms, both the chair and the vice chair. So I would suggest that we take one at a time. So let's open the floor for nominations for the chairmanship for the coming year.
I move for re-election of the current chair, Jack Marsh.
I second that.
Are there any other nominations from the floor for the chair position? Any discussion of the motion? All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed say nay. Passes. Next item is the election of a vice chair for the upcoming year. Jeff now serves in that role. We'll open the floor for nominations for vice chair.
I would nominate Jeff for re-election.
Second?
If re-elected, would you serve?
I would.
All right. Any discussion of the motion on the table? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say nay. Congratulations, Jeff. And I'll say it's a privilege to serve in this capacity. I think this is important work, and it's an honor to serve with all of you in this volunteer role. Carrie distributed in advance the draft of the minutes from our December 27th meeting, and copies of the minutes for those of you, the members of the public here. Copies of those minutes are on the table back there. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the December 27th meeting?
So moved.
Moved by Jeff. Is there a second? I think somebody's speedily trying to read the minutes.
I hesitate to second because I was absent.
And I'm the other one who was absent.
Well, I guess the chair can second the motion. I'll second the motion. I was both present and have read the minutes. Any changes or corrections to the minutes as drafted? All in favor of approving the minutes of the December 27th meeting, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Approved. Carrie also at our request has prepared an annual report, which also has some historic information on what this board has done, both with complaints as well as advisory opinions over the last several years, and that will be submitted to the mayor, as is our custom, and probably as is our requirement. So we ask for approval of the annual report that is drafted.
I make that motion.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second?
Second. Any changes at all? All in favor of approving the 2018 annual report, please say aye.
Aye.
And all opposed, say nay. All right. Next item is any business or pending issues to be brought before this board. And we do today have a request for an advisory opinion known as 19-1 that was filed on February 21st, 2019. A copy of that request for advisory opinion is also on the back table, and it was filed by Kim Koblank. Is that correct, Kim?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Kim, would you come on up, please? And first of all, we want to thank you for coming before us, for taking advantage of this. That's one of the things we can do for city employees is provide an advisory opinion, and we're glad to do so. So thank you for coming forward. It's always nice to be able to issue an advisory opinion instead of reviewing something that may have occurred that may or may not have been proper. So thank you for coming to us in advance. We have seen your written request, and you also submitted one additional, I guess, an exhibit, which was a letter from Bruce Lovett. Let's give you the floor and have you introduce yourself and explain the reason for your request for an advisory opinion.
Before we get to that point, we have one additional email that she had submitted to us that we thought might be
Very
relevant
good,
that I was
very
going to
good.
hand out. And we usually swear in
Yep, we'll do
still.
that.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so I will hand this out to you. And I'll put a copy on the back table for public too.
So, Ms. Goldbein, feel free to reference both the letter from Bruce Lovett as well as the email from Chris Pitcher. Let's just all it takes us one moment to read the letter, and if there's copies for the public as well.
Yep, yep. All right. I'll go ahead and swear you in and we can go on. Do you solemnly affirm that the evidence you shall give relative to this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under the penalties of perjury?
Yes.
Members of the board, are you ready to proceed? Okay. The floor is yours.
Okay, so I work at the downtown library. I am in charge of system support and collection development. So I work with the people that select the books and the acquisition and cataloging of the books. So we work regularly with a couple of vendors. Recorded Books is a vendor we've worked with for a long time. I've been with the library for 14 years, and we've been with them previous before my start. We had been with them for a long time before that. I'm not exactly sure the amount of time we've been with them, but it's a long-standing relationship. They are a specific vendor to libraries. They work directly with public libraries usually. They have exclusive recordings of specific authors, like we can only get audiobooks for this author from this vendor. So that's a big reason that we have been with them for a while, plus they just have treated us well as customers over the years. And we meet with them. They come to visit us a couple of times a year to discuss the different services they offer, you know, what's new, and then checking up to see if we need any help with anything or if we've had issues with them. They process materials for us that we purchase, and they come so we can just take them out of the box and put them on the shelf. So we have a few extra things they do for us that we also do with some other vendors. We have a budget of about, well, last year we spent around $800,000. I don't know the exact number, but of that money, we spent $53,000 with recorded books on physical and digital materials.
The 800,000 is your total acquisition budget?
Yep, for our total.
You're saying that the library system's $800,000 acquisition budget, $53,000 was spent with this particular vendor?
Yes. And the year previous, we had $765,000, and we spent around $47,000 with them. So they're not our main vendor, but it's somebody we have had a relationship with for a long time, and they are just really good about communicating with us and trying to keep that relationship healthy, so that if they want to come visit and talk about new products, you know, we're open to it, but you know, we can't do everything because of our budget constraints, but it's always good to hear what they have to say. They've been a main audio vendor for libraries for a long time. And so I think to me, this is an honor to be asked to serve on this because they are pretty well known amongst libraries. But I also wasn't sure if it was a conflict of interest because of the business part of it, so I wanted to see what your opinion was about it.
We're going to ask two board members if they have specific questions in just a moment, but could you clarify for us, please, in terms of the reimbursement or honorarium arrangement? Are you already attending that conference where the meeting will be held, or are they paying for your travel expenses and your lodging while you were there?
They aren't paying for the travel or lodging.
Right.
This honorarium is offered as a thank you to be a part of the board, but they aren't paying for any of that, any of the registration, lodging, or,
You are already attending that conference?
yes,
Okay. At the city's expense?
yes.
Okay. So the city is, so the library is paying all your expenses, but they are, in exchange for you serving on that advisory board, they were offering you a $500 honorarium.
Yes.
Is that correct?
So whether I decided to keep it or donate it, they said it was up to me, so. And that would be, I think, part of the decision too.
Very good. Okay. Well, let's open the floor to questions from the board.
Can I have a couple of questions? This email indicates that they are forming the board, so this isn't an ongoing thing that they have done, is that correct?
Nope, this is a one-time thing that they just started.
Okay.
Yep. And
It's
it looks
not
like it's
unusual
just for a year that they want me to commit to it.
So it's not unusual for a vendor to have like an advisory committee or something like that. It sounds like this is it. Is there, you indicated that you can only get certain titles from this company. Is there other competition that would be pretty much head-to-head with this group?
There are a lot of different audio vendors that we purchase from. There's another one that specifically deals with more like distributed titles is what they're called, where they can get all the different retail versions and sell them to libraries. And this company actually has a recording studio and brings in their own readers and does their own, they own the recordings because they produce them themselves, and those are their exclusive titles. So that's why we usually buy them directly from them.
So they make up like 6% of your spend. Do other vendors have a significantly larger portion of the library's spend than that 6%?
Yes, yep.
Okay, I would have assumed so. Those are the only questions I have.
You or Jeff?
I have excuse me, a couple. I also have a cold, so bear with me. In your write-up, you are in charge of acquisitions.
Mm-hmm.
So does that mean that you would negotiate or purchase directly from this company some of the books, audio books that they have?
What I do is I make sure that the orders are being submitted properly and that when we receive the items, everything looks like it should. It's in good shape. It's ready to go out. It matches what we ordered. I don't necessarily pick the titles. There are other people that work under me that will select the titles and submit the orders to another set of staff that then order the items for them. So we kind of have a two-check process before we order the items. Someone selects them, someone submits the order, and then when we receive them, we make sure everything looks like it should. So I'm just making sure that the money is being spent in a responsible way and in a way where we can spend it on time by the end of the year. And then I make sure that people are following our selection policy.
So do you have any influence on the orders? It sounds like you don't, but can you influence the number of orders or the amount of purchases through this vendor?
I don't do that. I mean, I think if we need a title and because we offer digital audiobooks and we from this vendor and from and we try to keep them pretty even. So that's my only direction to the staff that are selecting the items is let's keep the selection even between them, but I don't say order this title from here and order this title from there. And I leave it up to them to decide which ones work best on either format or either platform.
Are the costs of the books from this vendor, are they presented in kind of a price list? In other words, or is there negotiation on how much the cost of the audiobooks or the books might be? Can you negotiate a price?
No, I don't negotiate price. They have a standard price, and for customers that have standing orders or have spent a certain amount, you get a discount based on that.
Do you go to the ALA conference every year?
No.
But it has already been decided that you would go this year.
Yes.
And was that at all influenced by the possibility of you being on this advisory committee?
Yes.
You're saying yes and I'm saying no. No, we rotate who goes to conferences through all of our managers.
This
Sorry.
is Jody.
We'll come up.
We're gonna give you a second,
Okay.
we'll hear from you next, if that's all right. We need to make sure that the witness is sworn in. So, go ahead.
When was it decided that you'll go to this year's ALA conference?
In February.
Okay, before or after you were invited to be on this advisory board?
I didn't find out about it until after I was invited, but I didn't discuss it with Jody before that.
Kim,
Go ahead.
would it be your intention, this $500 is probably right at the level of, to be de minimis anyway, but would it be your intention to just have that donated somewhere?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions of Ms. Copeland? Just ask you to stand by if there are any around. Any other questions? All right, then let's take testimony from anyone else who's here. And ask you to come forward, introduce yourself, and then we will swear you in.
Do you solemnly affirm that the evidence you shall give relative to this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under the penalties of perjury?
I do.
Could you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, I'm Jody Fick, Director of the Library.
And Jody, how do you spell your last name?
F as in Frank, I-C-K,
Okay, and Jody is spelled
J-O-D-I.
J-O-D. Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Yes, I'm the Director of the Library, and yes, I've been there longer than, I've been Director for 2 years, but I've been with the library since it was formed in 1995. So would you like me to address your question about the conference?
Sure.
Okay,
And
sorry
other
about
questions as well.
doing that.
So you're a Copeland supervisor, is that correct?
Yes, I'm her direct supervisor.
Okay.
We budget for 2 people to attend either the Public Library Association Conference or the American Library Association Conference every other year, because the public library is every other, and that's actually a stronger conference for us. But the American Library one actually brings in libraries of all types, public, academic, school, just all, and special librarians. So it's a bigger conference, and gives us a little bit of a different audience as to what we're looking at. I rotate that conference attendance through my 15 professional staff, and we vary who is going based on the functions that they're doing. So the public library one, we usually send librarians who deal with public programming, so how to put the programs together. This one I want to send more of my backroom people, my people who work with technology and my people who work with selection.
And that decision was made when?
Well, as to the specific members, not who, the functions was made last year when I was putting the budget request together. So in March of the previous year, that we would
That's
send
when
2
you did the
people.
budget, but when did you decide to send Kim and register her?
Well, we haven't done the registration yet, but we
Okay.
decided in February of this year.
Okay.
Yeah. And I have another person currently at at the Computers and Library Conference currently. That was decided at that time too.
So Jody, I've been in a position of actually forming an advisory board for a company that I was helping run, and one of the things that I would do is wait until I knew who was going to be at a conference anyway.
Right.
And then kind of look down the list and find the right people. Is that what this company did probably, or?
I don't know how they why they approached
Okay.
him as to who was attending, because they would not have known she was going to attend at that point.
Understand.
Right.
Other questions of the director? Thank you. And you would stand by, please. We appreciate that. We've asked the city attorney, we always do in these cases, is to instruct us as to what ordinances may be pertinent here, and then give us your opinion as to what things we needed to determine before we make a recommendation on opinion.
Right, no,
Mr. Question.
thank you. Yeah, as I directed previously via email, the conflict of interest ordinances should be reviewed. One of the things in particular I would ask that you pay attention to is not so much an outright prohibition or permission granted via ordinance, but really generally speaking, when you look at the declaration of policy and its liberal construction to protect the public interest, that you consider those in light of the questions here. As far as any particular analysis of mine, obviously mindful that I'm not substituting mine for yours, some of the questions that I referenced previously, my sense is the personal financial interest in that, the importance of ensuring that there isn't any competition between the public interest and fiscal blanks, personal financial interest, I think is relatively clear. The question becomes, in some respects, that I would encourage you to consider is recorded books' position on this in light of the general policy of the city, particularly the statements from recorded books regarding their interest in having decision makers or influencers. Again, not casting aspersions, that's a sound business model. But the flip side of that, the potential tension on the city side, is the questions, some of which you've already asked, which is, okay, what is that decision-making role on our part in light of other distributors? I think there's a basis that a number of the things that they discussed are not competitive, but I also think that you may find that there is some of that. That's for you to determine, I think. And the other is one, if you look at the exhibit of the letter dated March 19, 2019, when there was a request on the recorded books side that they asked that members, what would be board members to not share any information outside of our organization that's not otherwise public. That makes sense from a business point of view, but from a governmental entity point of view, it's something you either want to consider or maybe ask questions about further, so that our employee doesn't find herself in a situation where they're asking her to not disclose things where she has a duty to the city on that part. So to me, those are the primary areas of the law, that general requirement to ensure that there isn't that conflict, even from a public perception point of view, but that individually she also is not put in a position where they're expecting her to be someone of influence or a decision maker, but also that just from a treatment of the information itself that she may receive, that her primary duty would be as an FTE with the city to ensure that it can be made public as applicable.
What about determining whether an honorarium gift, whether it's directly received or donated to a nonprofit, whether that would be considered nominal intrinsic value or not?
Well, I think from a nominal intrinsic value, I think there is some, if you look at the body of the law, this body has reviewed in the past, I think $500 would be high. That being said, factually speaking, when you ask what her intent is, and if you make it conditional upon the fact that it's donated, then her interest doesn't diverge there. So I think you would have an issue with the value. I mean, I think you'd be setting a different standard than you have in the past with that value amount. But again, it's also one that would be, an unsolicited gift that, it's one that she wouldn't be receiving if she was donating. That being said, you could also conditionally want to ensure it's donated in a way that doesn't create an additional conflict of interest. I think in some respects it's relatively de minimis in the world of, you know, the scope of amounts that we're talking about, but it's also when we want to be mindful of that it's not donated in a way that would create an issue.
Questions?
Their comments in the from recorded books, the comments about confidentiality and things, really doesn't give me much heartburn, but I'm curious what's the city policy if an employee comes to you and they'd asked her to sign an NDA, what would the city policy be?
Her signing a non-disclosure agreement, the city policy would be a conflict of interest.
But they're not asking that.
Right, they're not asking that, but there are allusions to that in the sense that we would ask that you not reproduce things, but that's the concern, is the competitive aspect, if there is one, and that's what you get to decide if there really is in light of what they're saying. Again, she can't control the message that they send regarding what they're asking of her.
If this provision though states it could be clarified, for example, either there won't be an NDA, or you could flesh out the fact that the matters that will be discussed are, you know, pretty benign and there's really no issue there, would that problem go away?
Again, you can make it conditional, I think, you know, or contingent upon there not being an NDA.
Maybe a question of Kim or Jody, if that would be okay.
Sure.
So you've heard the discussion around this request to keep things confidential. Do you have any indication of the type of topics that will be discussed or the kind of information that might be distributed during these meetings?
I don't. I just know that I just know the information that you've also received, the email from Chris Pitcher and the letter from Bruce, just explaining that they're trying to kind of look into the future and figure out what they want to do for audiobook services in the future. So I don't know any more than what you two, or those two items that you guys have received.
I'm going to point out to the board, I have significant experience forming these groups, these kinds of groups, from a vendor point of view, and also serving on them. It's not at all unusual for a company to say, I want decision makers, and that's not generally because we're trying to get them to buy more stuff, but because we want to ask them, how do we best fashion our offerings? What appeals to you? What doesn't appeal to you? And it makes no sense to ask that question to someone who's not in the role of making those kinds of decisions. So I have no problem with that. I think a reasonable person would understand that this amount is, the amount of the total spend is, 5 or 6% of the total budget. Kim doesn't have influence over that. It doesn't appear to be, she indicated she's going to donate that to charity, and with that provision that we direct her to do that, I would move that we ask the city attorney to craft an opinion opining that we don't see a conflict of interest in this situation.
Would you, do you want to make a conditional on, want to cover the non-disclosure?
I don't think it's necessary. So
Okay, and the condition, but you're saying the condition is that she not be directly compensated?
Yes.
But that it must be donated
Yep.
in a fashion she needs to see determines. Is there a second to that motion? There's not a second to that motion.
I'll second.
All right, go ahead. So the floor is open for discussion now.
Sure. Does it matter the nature of the charity? What if we were donated to the city? Would that make a difference? Could you donate it to the library, for example? Or does it have to be a charity unrelated to any city function? Maybe literacy or something like that?
I guess, off the top of my head, the issue there would be as long as it's not a pecuniary interest to her, as long as it's not some type of competitive thing, I think charity isn't necessarily of concern when it comes to conflict of interest. The concern would be that it goes to, and again, we're talking about $500 in the scheme of these contracts, but if it's donated in a way that creates an imbalance, there would be a problem there. But in the world of ensuring that she doesn't have a financial interest separate from that of the city, other than creating some problem, I don't see the donation itself being a problem.
Okay.
You know, part of the way I tend to try to look at these is the other vendor. You know, that's one way we talk about an objective, sort of reasonable person standard, which I think is allowed from a perception point of view. If you've got, and maybe they are, maybe they aren't, and maybe that's worth further exploring the level of that competitiveness to the two, and it requires a certain amount of speculation as we sit here as to what their perspective on that would be. Is it, you know, when we talk about her and how, you know, she's ensuring a balance there. If it doesn't tip that balance, it's one thing, but it's another for, I don't even know what the name of the competitor would be. Do they have a concern or a perception, again, going back to the general ordinances to say, is that a problem? Does that $500 honorary, which charity it goes to tip the balance? You know, I don't know what it does. It's something for the board to consider. But the primary thrust of this conflict of interest dialogue is whether or not she's benefiting, and if it's contingent upon that donation, you know, you at least eliminate that portion of the concern.
I don't know that I can modify my original motion, but I certainly accept an amendment if, you know, it might actually be a good idea to direct the donation to the American Library Association or something, to make sure that it's benign and we don't have a problem that it's going to, you know, some charity that might be controversial.
How would you feel about that it's donated, it's, right, okay.
Well, and if I made the other option, may be a declination.
Decline the honorarium altogether.
To decline the honorarium and decline the donation. Would you,
As you explore contingencies, that's something for the board to consider.
Yeah, but
That's
I-
better.
would you amend, would you,
But before we go to the amendment though, I mean, I still like the idea that if you were to identify a charity that would really create no issues, whether it be to the literacy or the like, it seems to take care of a lot of the problems too.
In today's environment, is there such a thing? Is a charity that somebody wouldn't object to?
Can we ask
So-
Kim if she might have a suggestion of an appropriate charity? I certainly don't want to dictate to her who she would.
do you want to answer that, Kim?
Well, my first thought is the Sioux Falls Area Community Foundation, just because they do serve a lot of different nonprofits, and a lot of people apply to grants for them to help the community. You know, they help community groups, but they help nonprofits, and they fund a lot of different things. And then it wouldn't be going to one specific project, but like a pool to serve the entire community.
Okay. Do you want to offer?
Perfect. You want to amend that?
I wanted to bring up something else though, and so it may be a two-part amendment, I don't know. I wonder if we want to find that a $500 honorarium to a city employee would be of more than de minimis value. Because we talked about that. What is our threshold? You said that it would be on the high end of what in the past we have considered. And so I wonder if it would be appropriate to include in the finding that we find that $500 honorarium has the potential to have personal financial, whatever, advantage to the person, but concur with the applicant's suggestion that a donation to the Sioux Falls Area Community Foundation would be an appropriate use of the honorarium.
So I would have a problem with that. There's a reason that we use the word de minimis, because something that could be de minimis in one case could be significantly different amount in another case. I don't see that we gain anything by choosing a number and saying this number is, anything over this amount is de minimis. Because I try to think of an example. I don't know what it would be, but we gain nothing by defining that. It's a facts and circumstances things, and I would hate to have that in our motions and minutes to bind some future board to end up having to say, it's not that big a deal. 15 years from now, 500 might not be that big a deal. I see no benefit in doing it, so I would not be comfortable with that.
So my question is, if Kim doesn't get the money, do we need to resolve the de minimis argument? Because she doesn't gain any benefit from it, she's gonna.
I was just following up on what our city attorney had said, that, that amount based on past precedent appears to be on the high side of what we would have considered. And so I was just wondering if we wanted to make any sort of statement kind of updating what in the past has been considered.
And I don't recall her ever drawing a line at any amount.
There have been some,
Well,
if you look at, there's a request for opinions advisory opinion number 03-3. Board members are paid $75 for attendance at each meeting of the board. So it does shift the dialogue somewhat. The ordinance language is now no intrinsic value for gifts. And so the question generally in those cases is, can an employee keep that? And so that's where you may want to distinguish. But I can see both ways of what you're saying, but I think a key would be to distinguish this is the contingency. Take this out. If it takes this out, and can an employee receive? Does this meet our current definition of what we consider nominal intrinsic value or not? But I think you're talking about a separate issue there. So I think your point is well made that in that dialogue there's two. The lawyer thing, right? I get that, but at some point I think you want to distinguish what's being received, but what's not being received in your decision. We want to be clear that this is something that, in the event that your motion is for conditional approval, that as long as that condition of it not being received is met.
And my motion wouldn't change whether the amount was $50, $500, or $5,000. The motion would be exactly the same.
Okay.
As long as it were either declined or donated to charity, I think the Sioux Falls Area Foundation would be a great choice. So,
And I agree, Stacy. I don't think we need to address the de minimis issue, given the fact that it's conditioned upon her not receiving it. So I don't think that's a question that we have to resolve.
I think that just to the devil's advocate thing, your comment about the amounts, when you start getting into 500 versus 5,000, now it matters what charity we're talking about, right? Is it contingent upon being donated to charity or to this particular charity? Because then you're talking, is it insulated from any influence because Ms. Goblank or somebody else saying, well, I can direct $5,000 or $10,000 to a particular charity. That's where de minimis and not de minimis matters.
There is a motion on the table. Does anyone want to offer an amendment to the motion?
I think we've had a couple. Maybe we can ask Carrie to take back where we're at.
Well, I think your primary motion was that we would move the draft, have the attorney draft an opinion that we don't see a conflict of interest in this situation, is what it was worded. And then I think that.
Subject to a donation to charity or a declaration.
And then we had, and then you added an amendment that direct the donation to a certain organization was the question at that point.
So is there any amendment to that motion?
and so the amendment at this point does not specify the Sioux Falls Area Community Foundation.
Why don't we do that?
amend the amendment to.
I want to offer an amendment to the motion.
Just to include, Sue, in your amendment, to include the Sioux Falls Area Foundation.
Yes, I would,
Okay, there's a motion to amend to specify that the honorarium, we would prohibit the honorarium from being received, but that we would instead direct a $500 donation to the Sioux Falls Area Community Foundation. Is that the essence of your amendment? Is there a second to the amendment?
I'll second.
Okay, we're not voting on the main motion now, it's just on the amendment. All in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So we're now back to the main motion as amended. I would stand and I will vote in opposition to this motion, even as amended. I don't think there should be any condition of either direct compensation or of directing it to a charity. I think that's a very slippery slope, and I don't see any reason why there has to be any compensation if we don't think the conflict exists. So I would oppose the motion as amended.
So, I'm not sure I understand, Jack.
I would-
You're just asking for a declination?
I would go for a full declination
of the honorarium.
of the honorarium and of directing it to a charity. That would be the position I would take.
And slippery slope is,
Slippery slope is that next time maybe it's an offer of like a $5,000 donation or $10,000. I don't know at what point does it become?
Or some argument
It
about
could-
which charity?
Or it could be that it may appear that, okay, well, this vendor is going to be held in better stead now because, they were generous with whatever charity we designated. I see no conflict with a city employee being part of a vendor advisory group like this, as long as we're not bound by confidentiality and as long as there's no compensation, even donation and no compensation. So I would favor a full declination of any compensation.
We've already passed that amendment. Had I heard that argument before we voted on the amendment, I probably would have voted differently. But now, Mr. Chairman, how do you get us out of the position that we're in?
I think we can make a further amendment,
We can make a further amendment, like,
if
there's a
that's
little-
okay.
I'm sure it is.
You want to make the further amendment?
I would amend my original motion to include declination of the honorarium.
Can I second that?
Okay.
But you just make sure we all, they admit the motion does allow Kim to serve on the board. right?
Correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
But essentially without compensation.
Got it.
Okay. All in favor of the amendment to the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Okay, we're back to the main motion. So it is, we find that there's not a conflict of interest as long as there is, as long as there's a full declination of any compensation, whether direct compensation or a donation. In lieu of. Further discussion? Mr. Quaisha, any thoughts there before?
No, I mean, no compensation including expenses.
I had understood the travel was already paid.
Yeah, but travel was
Right,
paid.
for that particular conference.
I mean, she's there as a city employee at the city's expense. She's going to participate in a vendor advisory group, and without compensation, we find that that is not a conflict of interest. And so we would be directing you as the city attorney to draft language consistent with what you heard here. Any further questions or thoughts? Okay, let's go back to the main motion and vote on the main motion. Terry, you want to read the motion?
Okay, I think I got this. So the main motion originally was that we moved to have the attorney draft an opinion that we do not see a conflict of interest in this situation, subject to full declination. Is that accurate? Of the honorarium.
The honorarium, and that would include designating a jury. Stacy, you've heard the argument, so we'll let you put that in proper language. I think you captured the spirit of it, right?
I believe so.
Okay.
And I know you mentioned language, we're asking for opinion, written by. on
Yes,
this question.
normally what happens is the city attorney will take, or, take the spirit of what we said, draft the language, I will then sign off on it, and then the subject, it comes back to this board at our next meeting.
Do you want to make that motion to allow Stacy to draft the opinion and we sign it?
Absolutely. Correct. Okay. And then we'll come back to this board at our next meeting. Okay. Be part of the official record. Okay, any further discussion?
Do you need a separate motion on that, or is that included?
We've had a separate motion in the past with boards. Okay. You? Okay.
We haven't voted on the main motion.
No.
That's
So let's vote on the main motion, and then we'll direct the city attorney to draft. Okay.
yes.
All in favor of the main motion, say aye.
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 All opposed, say nay. Passes unanimously, 4-0. Okay, second motion then, and Terry, why don't you give us the language on that to direct the city attorney to prepare the language?
To authorize the board's legal advisor, Stacy Priester, to draft an advisory opinion consistent with the discussions and motion of the board, and to authorize the board chair to sign the opinion as drafted on behalf of the board.
Motion to that effect.
So moved.
So moved by Sue.
Second.
Second by Greg. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, say nay. Well, Ms. Koblak, again, I want to thank you for bringing this to our attention. You had questions about it, and we had questions as well, and I think we came out in a good place. But I just want to commend you for taking advantage of this body and bringing the matter forward. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. This is now the portion of the meeting where we are open to any public input. Is there anyone who wants to offer any public input?
I'm Bruce Danielson.
Okay. Bruce, just to let you know what our procedures are now, we allow up to 5 minutes of general comments.
I promise it won't be 5 minutes.
Very good. Please proceed.
First of all, I'm sorry I missed your December 27th, 13th meeting, or 13-minute meeting where apparently no members were here. It would have been interesting to see that and film that, so sorry I missed that. I want to compliment you all on the decision you just made. A couple of years ago, if you remember the discussion that was here about the gift cards that were to be given to the law enforcement, you came up with the same rationale and you made the same decision there. You allowed them, though, to keep the greeting card, but they had to turn all the gift cards back in. Essentially, you said the same thing. It was de minimis. I think I said that right. And there was an insignificant value to each one of those cards, but yet it was the thought. And you came up with the same decision. So, Mr. Kreischer, when you go and you write this decision, you may see how that was constructed, and you'll find the same logic was put into it. That I really appreciate it. But I did have one other comment I wanted to make on, because I was trying to decide with my schedule today if I could make it to the meeting, and I wanted to see what was on the agenda. And all I found was the agenda, but there weren't any attachments out there on the website. So I wanted to make sure that, several of us have been calling back and forth to find out what was going on here today. And because other people like to come to these, as you've noticed in the past, when there's things of interest. And since we couldn't find it, I decided to come anyway and record it, so.
Did you scroll down, because it's all one document, I scanned it in all
It's
in
up,
one document.
I looked at the opening pages of it, and, you know, I saw the minutes and.
Yep,
Yep.
if you keep going down, this opinion was at the
Okay,
very bottom.
normally it's to the side, so, okay, that's,
Yep, it's all in one document, so it's attached as an
I'm
attachment
sorry,
to the
it's,
agenda.
it was missed, so.
Okay,
We, evidently all of us that called me didn't see that, so if there's some way to notate it that the agenda follows on the sheet that would, you know, what the discussion was about, if you could put that, you know, right here on the section so that when you have 19.1 or -1, it would say, you know, follows below. It would have saved me a lot of phone calls today that I received, so. So that's why I ended up here today, and I'm actually really glad that I did, because I really enjoyed watching the discussion between the four of you, and Stacy, your work in bringing, you know, the discussion into it, so it was good. Thank you very much.
Bruce, I just want to say, you know, we believe in transparency here, and I think maybe there was a new way it was displayed on the website, but we put it all out there.
Yeah, and it was just confusing, so we're trying to simplify.
If you ever do open it up, that file, and you don't find the complaint or find the accompanying documents, feel free to call the city attorney's office and we'll take care of it. All right.
Well, actually, I did call the city attorney's office and nobody answered the phone. So it was like, okay, I tried everything I could, so.
Okay, thank you very much.
I'm not afraid to make those phone calls.
Okay. Is there any other business to come before this body? Is there a motion for adjournment? Second. All in favor? Aye. Stand adjourned. Thank you.